here for last Saturday. This is going to be the same one, obviously, because I was told to do that, but it's always a little bit different. So, for those who didn't get to hear it, here you go. But it was a really good time last Saturday, and I was really appreciative of all who did come out, and I'm sure, I think we're supposed to have another one of those like in the spring again, possibly, but we'll see if we can figure it out. We'll jump right into it. So, for those of you who haven't heard, growing up, myself and a couple other people in Shaler in public school, it was really hard sometimes. And in high school, there was this time where I really had to like reevaluate who my friends were and what was going on. But what really was the moment that did it is, in gym class, I had these two kids who I thought were my friends. And one of them I had known since elementary school, since kindergarten. And growing up and just growing up together, I always just kind of considered them one of my friends. And during gym class, you know, that was our only class together for the day, and we would sit and talk and whatnot, and we would go throughout our day. But one thing that always stood out was those two, they would always play jokes a lot, you know. It's just something that young kids do. You joke around with each other. But sometimes it didn't quite feel like jokes. And after a little while, after a bit of time, and just different times passed and different games passed through gym, I started to realize that, hey, this is actually kind of frustrating. This is actually kind of like feeling like I'm getting attacked. Like everything I do was wrong. They make fun of everything I say, whatnot. And if I ever try to defend myself, they're right there just cutting me down right again. So it was extremely frustrating to me. And I'm like, you know, these are my friends. I understand. It's just joking. It's just how we do it. Just playing rough. We're just joking with each other. And the day came where another student in class, someone I knew pretty well also, but not even nearly as long, came up to me and goes, Dan, why do you let those kids bully you? And that was the moment where I realized, like, these are my friends, but I never even realized that I was being bullied. I never even realized that these jokes that I had myself convinced were just fun was actually me being bullied. So this was a really, really tough time for me where I was trying to figure out, obviously I know this is not how you want to treat anyone, let alone your friends. So what can I do? What should I do about this? What should I do friends-wise? Do I no longer hang out with them? Do I no longer try to talk to them, associate with them? Who should I have friends with? And it was a really troubling experience for me because I felt like I had nowhere to turn. I didn't know where the answers should be, but I really did. And one thing growing up in church is that you always get told when you need an answer, there's a book to help you out. It's called the Bible. But in high school, I didn't ever read. I never read, maybe monthly, maybe at a youth group, whatnot. So I was like, I don't even know any verses. I don't know where to start. What should I do? So I was like, well, what's some verses I do know? I was like, obviously there has to be some refrigerator verse, something that is applicable to me. And there was one that I remember standing out that my dad used to tell me a lot. And it's Proverbs 13:20. And this was really the first time that I ever looked to the Bible for like help with applying it to my everyday life. So Proverbs 13:20. It's a very simple verse. He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm. Well, I had my answer. Wasn't necessarily an answer I completely understood or I even wanted. But I had my answer. But I didn't know how to apply it. So I thought about it for a while. I'm like, man, that was really interesting how the Bible helped me out and I could actually apply it to my life. I want to walk with the wise. I want to be wise. And I don't want to hang out with those fools anymore because obviously I'm suffering harm. How do I go about taking the next step then? I was like, you know what? The Bible helped me out once. Maybe, just maybe, it could do it again. So, me being still in the same place, I didn't know many Bible verses. I didn't read the Bible much. So I was like, what's another refrigerator verse that I could know? I was like, maybe if I find one in a book somewhere that I can apply, maybe there's something else there too. So I was like, Proverbs is pretty good so far. I'll keep reading Proverbs. And I came across another verse that was also very refrigerator-esque. Proverbs 27:17. And everyone knows this one. As iron sharpens iron, so when one man sharpens another. It's like, okay, yeah, I've heard that one before, It's good. It's great. How to apply that? And I was continued reading, and I was like, you know what? 19 also speaks very interestingly, because this was the first time in my life where I realized there's something called like Cliff Notes in your Bible. It has little extra explanations for stuff that was really awesome, and different translations. And 19 says, as water reflects a face, so a man's heart reflects a man, or reflects the man. And another translation for that actually was, as water reflects the face, so the people who he surrounds with reflects his heart. And that was very interesting to me, because I thought about it, and I'm like, if my heart is in the right place, what should the people around me look like? Who should my friends look like? So I had an answer of who I wanted to surround myself with. I had an answer of what that should look like. Now my next step was, I have friends. How should I treat them? Like, what should this look like in my everyday life? And I kicked that for a while. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I'll just keep doing me. I know I should be nice. I know I should try to be there for them if they ever need anything. Hang out with them, spend time with them. But one thing that kept recurring to me was the story, and I knew the story, obviously, of the Sermon on the Mount. And we won't go into that today, because that's its own message in itself. There's so much there. But I remembered about the story of the Sermon on the Mount, and how Jesus spoke about how we should treat people. And not necessarily even our friends. He talked about enemy soldiers, how we should take that extra mile, give them that extra next step. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Is that what I should try to do for my friends? Obviously, I wanted to do that for my friends. And obviously, I wanted them to treat me the same way. But it was a very confusing time for me. Because in high school and college, in modern education, one of the biggest unwritten rules you're taught is always put yourself first. You should always worry about yourself first. Get you done, get your good grades, and then help other people. And that didn't sound like the Sermon on the Mount to me. How do I go about applying putting other people first while also putting myself first? And it took me a long time, many weeks, to realize that I can't do both at once. So I had to decide, how should I live my life? How should I try to pursue these friends? So I thought of an exercise. Here's a little exercise we'll do together. Some people already did it once already before this, so they know what point I'm going to make. But who are some of the best people you know, and what are their traits? You can just shout them out. Who are some of the best people you know, and what are their traits? Mostly the traits.
Selflessness.
Selflessness.
Merciful.
Merciful. Humble. Dependable. Absolutely. Nowhere in any of these traits did I see the idea of being selfish. I saw selflessness, not selfishness. So I was like, why? I'm so confused and so frustrated at this point. Why would these people be telling me and telling these other students to live to be selfish when we should be selfless? So I decided at that point, maybe we should start modeling our lives after the people who are selfless instead of selfish. And then that led me to another standstill. How the heck do I do that? I have no idea. I'm just some high school kid. I don't know what to do. But how do I live my life to the point where I'm selfless for God? And for that, at the time, when I knew nothing about the Bible, I was like, hey, Sermon on the Mount really helped me. That's an interesting story. I like reading those stories. Maybe I should find some other stories. So then that's when I was reading through Matthew one time, and it's Matthew chapter 14, starting at verse 13, and it's the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Now a little precursor to this, when this miracle happened, this was legitimately right after John the Baptist had been beheaded by Herod. Murdered, not killed, murdered. So Jesus walked away and went to spend some alone time. And we'll pick up in verse 13 here. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." The disciples said, "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said, and he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Pretty crazy. This was an amazing miracle that God did through the disciples. And reading through this, I was like, well, I like that story a lot, but how can it even be applicable? Because I was thinking out of from the point of view of Jesus. But what is really interesting about the story, actually, is what the disciples bring. They know that they don't have enough. They know that without God's help, that they're not going to be able to do what they need to do. But despite that, they trust in God and they bring what they have. They didn't have enough, but they bring what they had so God could use it. And through that, God completed his task. Why this is applicable to us is the fact that we're never going to be enough. We're never going to be able to walk enough miles. But if we bring the heart that we'll walk as far as we need to, and then some, God can use that to perform miracles and to deliver people in ways that have never been done. The people that we know who are humble, who are selfless, Jesus, our main role model, we need to use these as examples and a model for our own lives. We can't be stuck in this idea of being selfless, of putting ourselves first and then helping people with the leftovers. We have to bring what we have and all that what we have, and God will use it even though it's not enough. With that being said, don't be afraid to go the extra mile. Don't be afraid to give off that extra set of clothes, because it's not enough, but for somebody it will be enough, and God will use it. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for your words, Lord. Just as we continue on throughout the week, I pray a blessing over everybody. Anybody who needs healing, a touch of you, just your breath upon them, Lord. Just be there and give them reminders that you're always with them. As we go home today, protect everybody as they drive safely home, Lord. Just we thank you and we glorify you.